So big milestone today. We are finally going to attack these concrete floors, and they're smooth. They got a power trowel, pretty smooth. A couple imperfections, but I mean, I'm not looking for a mirror finish. I ultimately decided on using a product called BallistiX. I'm here in Virginia. They happen to be based locally down in Fredericksburg. The people there were super chill. They spent about an hour and a half with me going over the product and different types of applications I could potentially use it for. So ultimately we're gonna do what's called a clean and seal. So biggest challenge I have for a clear is all these tire marks and of course all the mud. There's a little bit of mastic and some mud throughout the floor, but I want to get all that cleaned off before I seal it. And I'm looking for that natural concrete look. I wanted something that would repel oil and gas and all sorts of chemicals. So this is the solution that I settled on. Actually, a shout out to a company called Epoxy because they turned me onto this product. You know, they were very selfless in referring me to this new product, and they just happened to be right down the road from me. So I ended up buying from them direct after spending some time there. So anyhow, the plan is to start. I'm going to start in the middle of the road. I've got 60 all the way to 320 grit sandpaper down here, and then I've got an assortment of pads. That black pad's got like diamonds impregnated in it to help with the help cutting it. But they got 60, 80, 100, 120, 150, 320. I'm actually going to start right in the middle with the 320 and see if that's enough to cut some of the mud. Again, there's some imperfections like this. I think that stuff looks cool. I think it's going to be just a nice finish. Again, it should sort of give it a wet gray look, whatever, the natural concrete color. But need to get all this rubber off and all the mud. Of course, underneath here won't be as bad, just a lot of mud. So that's why I wanted to start in the middle of the road. That way, if I need to go down a little bit to get the rest of the mud or the tire tracks off, I just save myself some time if I don't have to use the 60s and get rid of all the swirl marks. So I've got this 20-inch floor buffer. There's actually a screen underneath that. That's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to actually wet sand because from what I understand, it gets a better bite, and it's also going to keep the dust down. I don't want any dust in here since I've already got the top side sort of finished. I've got my desk up there and all that kind of stuff and computers, so I don't want it to get all dusty in here. So the plan will be to start with the wet sand. I'm just going to do a couple passes right in here to see how well it's cutting. I'm going to vacuum it off with the wet vac, and we'll see how this goes. All right, so the biggest challenge with this part is just keeping the floor wet. Actually, the real challenge was just learning how to use the buffer for the first time. It kind of spun me around like a dance partner for a little bit. Once I figured it out, it was pretty easy to operate. You could basically operate it with one hand. But the key here was just keeping it wet, both in front of where you were heading and then behind you, to make sure that slurry didn't harden up. So we had the wet vac going. I had my boys. I had to have them out there helping with the stuff, and of course they learned a few new words that day. Pretty frustrating process. About this time is where the sandpaper stopped sticking to the bottom of the diamond pad. So I scratched the sandpaper, just pulled it off, and just went with the diamond pad by itself. Ended up doing a pass across the entire pad with the black diamond pad. I came back to some trouble spots with 150 grit because the 150 would actually stick to the bottom. So I ended up doing the whole thing in 150 back with the diamond pad. I basically wore those pads down to nubs, and then I ended up mopping the entire floor, pulling like extra slurry off of it and everything. I think my wife helped me clean it, but there was several hours in just cleaning and prep, even before we get this product applied. So basically, like, this is the process we did over the entire floor, and try to get up as close to the wall as possible before banging into it 100 times. But I'm definitely going to go back and probably just do about a foot of touch up the whole way around from where stuff got splattered up on it, and where I was banging against it when the buffer kind of got out of my control every once in a while. All right, so here we are. We were able to get up all the mastic and the paint and the tire tracks, most importantly. So my concern is it's really hard to get all the concrete dust off, and I'll show you. It could still be a little wet, but I think there's at least a couple more cleanings in my future before I'm ready to do anything. Some of this could just be the way the trowel was done, but anyhow, I had a hard time getting some of this sealant off. That's where the tube ruptured. Got a couple spots here where I need to mop it up, but I think I'm gonna come back with a mop and really try to get this cleaned up. But the profile on it is pretty darn smooth right now. I end up using the 320 wouldn't stick to the pad, so I ended up going with the 150 and then going with the diamond pad. And I'm gonna do a wet mop first, try to get more of the dust off. Then I'm gonna hit this. I think I do this with the isopropyl alcohol, and again, I'll have to come back through and make sure I don't have anything that's imperfections in the concrete. But I just want to make sure I get all the dust off so that this BallistiX adheres and gives a really good bond. So we'll come back after I've done a mopping and after I've done the red pad. Okay, we got all 4 quadrants completely sanded down. You can see got all the tire marks off. No more glue and drywall mud and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's some just the normal imperfections. Actually, a lot of imperfections from the trowel, but that's what I want. I want it to just look like natural concrete, as natural as it gets, I guess. But cleaned up really well. I used this red pad to take the last little layer of dirt and stuff off. I'm going to reserve the isopropyl alcohol I have and use it on a microfiber mop, and I'll do that. I'm going to wait 2 days because there's still some moisture obviously in the slab, and I just hand mopped this whole thing with a freaking kitchen mop, but I got a really good amount of concrete dust off. Some of the slurry that was left behind I was able to scrub off. So it's good and clean. I'll ISO it with the microfiber mop, and then we'll start on this one and this one because they'll be the least likely to be seen, and then hopefully any lessons learned will carry over to the rest of the pad. But I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, and I'll check back here in a little bit once I start on the BallistiX product. All right. So I don't know if I had to do it or not, but it was worth the $4 in paper to mask off the walls, just to keep any overspray off of them. But I'm about ready to mix these, and then I'm going to run out and buy some couple respirators because I forgot to pick those up, and then I'll do the ISO right before I apply this. But anyhow, the way this stuff works is that there's 3 parts, A, B, and C, and I'm going to mix part A and B together, and it's supposed to come up to temperature. It comes up to like 135 degrees. There's a thermometer on it, but I've also got a laser here so I can check it. But shoot, here goes nothing, because once you start letting this stuff like catalyze, it begins its end of life. I think you can save it in the refrigerator for a week or so. Yeah, so part B, A together. Probably should be wearing safety glasses. All right, so those two
I'm now mixing. I have to give it a good shake. Shake the shit's leaking out somewhere. That cap. I can feel it getting warm already. I'm gonna basically open the seal on that thing so it can expand. It's already at 111 degrees, 112. So I will come back in a little bit. I'm gonna go buy a respirator. My wife and I are gonna start spraying this stuff.
So we're rocking the respirators mainly because the isopropyl alcohol, you know, as you're misting and spraying it on, it like aerosolized. So super potent odors after we sprayed the alcohol. I actually don't think that this product off gas is very bad at all. I know that there's horror stories with some other, you know, garage sealants, you know, with epoxies and polyureas, and they have people have problems like months later with horrible odors still, like the VOCs still in the air. I'm just a couple days, like this is day 2 or 3 now, and there's a little bit of off-gassing, you know, while it's still curing. It takes 7 days for this stuff to fully chemically cure. So I'm really happy with the low level of odor it puts out. But again, like once you've cleaned a pad this size, and I didn't have any windows open just to keep humidity down, you know, the alcohol odor was really strong. So anyhow, this stuff was pretty easy to apply. It took a while for Sarah and I to kind of get the hang of each other's, you know, pace going back and forth. And obviously the first thing we noticed was how this was evaporating or absorbing in, you know, inconsistently. And I knew that this would be a primer coat. The reason I use this as a primer coat is because the actual primer that they sell requires the BallistiX to be applied within 10 minutes. So I wasn't sure I'd be able to keep nice wet edges, and I was afraid I'd have inconsistencies in between each one of these squares here if I try to like run back and forth between primer and the final product. So we determined, you know, after talking to the folks down at Megan's, just to use a sacrificial coat. So that's what I'm doing here. They call this a sacrificial coat. It's still sealing the pad, but it's not very consistent. And I think ultimately that's what sort of led to the inconsistent finish at the end. So in hindsight, I would use a primer. I would have just tried to figure it out. I didn't realize how fast this stuff would. The product is definitely on the concrete though, because you can drop water on it, and it repels, like fully water repellent. So that's a good sign. So I've got like this 24-hour window. You can kind of see it. Some of it's shiny, some of it's not. I guess this is maybe just more porous. I mean, it's really smooth, but it's still, I'm sure it's still porous. But you see underneath there, it did not, you know, cover any differently. Same thing. So maybe those are smoother spots. Back there, it looks completely dry. So I don't know. Maybe I screwed up completely, but I'm gonna go back over this with ISO, prep it for the second coat, and we'll see what happens. Taking a quick video just to show, I think I might have ruined my floors. Not ruined, but I didn't exactly get the aesthetic outcome I was looking for, because it just didn't seal uniformly. I don't know if it was something, I can't stand here long, man. These fumes are strong, mostly because of the alcohol beforehand, but it just didn't take, I don't know, it didn't take the way I thought it would. Kind of just looks wet and drying. The places that it had cured to last night, you know, I did the white buffer, I used the alcohol, and it still did really not bond to itself. And you can see here, it almost looks like wet streaks that I think I'm gonna be stuck with. So I don't know what the outcome will be. Honestly, as long as it repels oil, I'm fine with it, but I just kind of had a different visual in my head what I thought it was going to turn out like. So we'll check it in the morning and see how much it changes from this. All right, so it's the next morning, and I'll say I didn't ruin my floors, but I must have done something a little bit wrong. There's some spots that didn't adhere to itself. Even though I prepped it with ISO and used the white pad on it ahead of time, it didn't reabsorb within the 24-hour. I was well within the 24-hour window, but I kind of like that it's not perfectly uniform. It didn't turn out exactly as expected. I don't know what I did differently on this pad compared to that one. I did everything the same, but that pad, that area over there, like just beyond that seam, just accepted the product differently. Now, I still think it's going to repel water, because one of the test areas I did yesterday was over here. And I mean, it's got a pretty good smooth feel to it, but it just looks different from this pad, like very much so. And then underneath there, you can see the closer you got to the wall, the less it absorbed. So I don't know. Maybe I didn't grind it good enough up against the wall. I'm not really sure. So anyhow, I would say I didn't ruin my floor. The aesthetics aren't exactly as I had envisioned, but quite frankly, as long as it repels oil and water and everything, I'm gonna still be happy with it. And again, this is I'll be using this garage, I'll be parking vehicles in here, whatever. As long as it repels that kind of stuff, I'm gonna be happy. This back wall is gonna have shelving, built in and all sorts of stuff like that, and workbenches along here. So I don't really care that it's not along those edges. So anyhow, I probably did something wrong along the process, or didn't do something exactly right. Maybe my finish wasn't polished enough. I don't know. There's probably a dozen things wrong that I might have done, but anyhow, I would certainly use this product. I would say it might be easier if you have a smaller square footage. Again, it's called BallistiX. I got it from a place called Megan's Supply down in Fredericksburg. I think they're like the parent company. Anyhow, those folks were really awesome. This stuff looks really good on epoxy floors, and I just didn't want epoxy, and I didn't want flake. I don't know, this is probably grow on me. I kind of like that it's just weird looking. I don't know. But anyhow, I don't think I can drive on it for a week or anything like that, but it is no longer, it's not tacky or sticky or anything like that. So I'll probably pull down the paper later today and just try to let it cure without putting anything on it. So if you got any questions, just let me know.
All right, so here are the before.
And here's after.
I almost forgot to tell you why I chose this product, the BallistiX. It's called BallistiX Squire. They have a couple different versions. Squire is a gloss finish. They have a satin finish, or maybe a matte finish. But you got to check out the products. I think the website is called squeezeyourtrigger.com. Again, I bought it from Megan's Supply down in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and I talked to those folks last night. They were awesome as usual. Give me some information. I sort of told them about how what my concerns were and that sort of thing. And I will have, like, this is going to be what the aesthetics are of it. I have some spots that look like a wet mop was drug across. I see mop marks. So that was either I was pressing too hard or not enough product, like beginners, errors essentially. The good news is that between the two coats, it is completely sealed. I mean, you can pour water on it. I don't know if I have any water right here, but it like it's completely hydrophobic. You know, the water is just sitting there. It's actually just the water is just slowly rolling off. You know, like it would on a wax car. So excited about that. I'm ready to have it cure. I think it's 7 days for full cure time. The reason I chose this product was because it has a higher temperature rating, or it can withstand higher temperatures. It has a higher abrasion resistance, and it was significantly cheaper. I mean, I've got 1,600 square feet of concrete. Epoxy was going to be a ton. I looked at polyurea, and ultimately I settled on this product, and I'm happy with it. It took a little bit of prep to make sure the concrete was clean, but I had to weigh that option when I was getting this thing under roof. I hadn't learned about this product when it was exposed. Otherwise, I would have put it on before I had any tire marks. I wouldn't have had to worry about drywall, all that kind of stuff, but I didn't know it existed. It took me a couple months to do the research and decide what I wanted to use. So again, despite my experience with this, I would highly recommend this product if you want a clear look to your concrete. And you know, good luck doing your own floors. Let me know if you have any questions.